I do think that the most important use case for AI is in extending our lifespans. This is not 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. This is like right now. Already, things are happening in AI that are going to change the world overnight in terms of our health and healthcare. And once again, I'm continuing the discussion with Hamed Shahbazi, the founder of Well Health, but also the founder of HealWell. And HealWell basically has taken, and this is a publicly traded company in Canada. Knock yourselves out if you want to invest in it, but listen to this podcast first, because HealWell basically took 18 million patient records. A patient record is anything like when you call up your doctor and it's like, oh, I have a sore throat, but my leg hurts. And after various tests and patient visits and so on, there's a diagnosis and then there's treatment. And imagine if you put 18 million records like that into an AI, the result is when a new patient comes in, right from the phone call where the patient is complaining about their symptoms, the AI is already in motion, figuring out a diagnosis that the doctor might not even have a clue on, and then figuring out what tests needed and what possible treatments there are. It's proven this speeds up diagnosis and treatment so quickly and we all know that prevention is the cure. This is how you expand lifespans. So Hamed and I talk about, this AI and other future use cases of AI and how he's using it to stay healthy, for instance, how you could, and just what the future of healthcare AI is. It's so fascinating, and these companies are so exciting. Like this is the real. Everybody's all afraid of AI, but AI is going to save millions and millions of lives. It probably already has, and it's going to continue to do so. So, such a great conversation with Hamed Shahbazi. Listen to this, subscribe to our podcast. I'm going to be giving you a lot of up-to-date news about AI and companies doing AI and all of the things I'm excited about with AI in the next months and years and so on. So let's keep this rolling. Here's Hamed talking about healthcare AI.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Yeah, I mean, how are things going in general? Like, how's the company? How's HealWell? How's Well?
Everything's going really well. Like we're very focused right now on really developing these tools for healthcare providers. We're also working very hard to collect the consents from the patient population that we have. See, a lot of people are always talking about how much data they sit on and how much data they have, but they can't do anything with the data. And it's because it takes hard work to go through and actually collect the proper consents unambiguously, not trying to slide things by people.
Well, actually, this is an interesting topic. I wanna talk about this because I think this is an interesting topic for AI and healthcare in general. And I'm just curious, like, what pushback have you seen from the healthcare industry, from doctors in particular, and then I'll get to patients, but from doctors in particular about using AI in their practice?
It's really been an interesting journey, actually, with that. I would tell you that pre-pandemic, even though AI and machines were around and the ability to kind of crunch data, doctors were very against it. And the view was that machines would find out where they have done things that didn't contribute to the best care outcomes, and they were worried that machines would sort of show them up and identify things that they may have not done perfectly.
Which by the way, would be a good thing, but of course they feel threatened by it. So it's like I always assume. Let's best case scenario, doctors are in it to help people and cure people of illnesses and prevent people from getting illnesses. So they have all the good intentions. And yes, doctors are well-paid profession. So another reason is doctors want to make money. But at the end of the day, we're human, and a lot of humans feel threatened by, is AI going to take my job, or is AI going to make a fool out of me in some way?
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think there's different subspecialties that have a lot of that fear of replacement right now. I mean, there was actually decreases in enrollment in radiology for a while because the view is like, hey, what's the point if a machine is going to do a better job? But I think what I understand is enrollment's back up now because most people understand that no matter what happens, not in the foreseeable future, is a medical system going to allow a machine to make a decision. It'll allow a machine to provide decision support and help amplify and support a physician in making a call. That was kind of a key difference that was, I think, feared for a while. And in the case
but the key word there is, and sorry for interrupting, but I have questions along the way. The key word there is allow. It's the law that a computer cannot, talk to the patient after, an X-ray. It actually has to be a human licensed radiologist by law who interprets the X-ray for you. Even if there's a glaring tumor right on the X-ray, you cannot talk to anybody other than a licensed radiologist. So they're protected now by the law, which is a good thing. I think there is a human side to doctor-patient relationships, but it's interesting that enrollment was down. I did not know that initially.
Yeah, it did. And you're right. I think there's positives and negatives, probably more positives at this stage for medical professionals to have to weigh in on a quote unquote decision. But I feel like over time it'll become more nuanced where like we already know that machines and machine learning and AI can do just as good a job, if not better than a human in things like, examining a mole and determining whether it's cancerous or looking at an X-ray. Like the field of vision of a human is just not going to be as good as an incredibly well-trained machine, right? But I think it's like you said, it's all of the other aspects of care. It's about sanity checking the situation. It's about providing patient care. It's about communication. Over time, these things may allow certain machines to start to make a decision, or to have their decisions or their analysis be more relied upon.
Well, right now, like the HealWell. So your company HealWell has these, what is it, like 18 million patient records of a patient essentially calling up and saying, "Oh, my knee hurts. I have a sore throat. I have a headache. What's wrong with me?" And you used kind of supervised learning. Each one of those patient records has a diagnosis that eventually they came to, whether it was that day or weeks or months later. And now that's all been crunched into an AI. And now you're able to take a new patient who's calling up with complaining about something and do a diagnosis very quickly. Are those AI generated diagnoses better than, have you been able to measure, are they better than the doctor diagnosis or faster, or in what ways is it better?
Yeah. So in general, I mean, what we found with our physician co-pilots, the AI physician co-pilots that we've deployed, what we found is that they've done a pretty good job of identifying, some gaps in care. Doctors get most of the things that they're doing right, but doctors also have really messy inboxes. So there's always stuff coming into a physician's inbox or a patient record. There's lab results coming, there's specialist results coming, there's even hospital stuff coming in. Everything always goes back to your primary care provider, right? And so, there's this expectation for your primary care provider to integrate all this information all the time and be able to provide the most up-to-date, aware perspective about your health. But that is simply an unreasonable expectation. Up here in Canada, where I live, doctors are getting paid $30 to $35 a patient visit to do that. And there could be hundreds, if not thousands, of patient records that they need to skim through and understand. That's just not reasonable, right? And so I think we need, just like a plane that requires a pilot, it does so with the help of an onboard computer. I think you need diagnostics and machines to be able to crunch all this complex data to provide insights to physicians.
So it's viewing, and I think this is an important thing. Like anybody threatened by AI should make this leap. It's viewing the AI as like an incredibly good and informed assistant, essentially.
Exactly. AI is really good at taking complex data sets and really digesting them and providing simple insights and signal.
And it's not like a search engine. It's not like, oh, tell me more about AI that I type into Google. It's like it's seeing all these patient records and has in its memory natural, like plain English records of 18 million other patients who have been diagnosed or have received treatment in the past. And so it's able to say, this is like this 127,000 other patient records that were similar to this. I'm combining it all in my head right now and seeing what the most likely, neural network produced outcome is of this particular patient.
Yeah. I mean, that's when, with that kind of deep learning and the broader data sets, the ability to to provide those types of insights are incredible. But there's so many different types of tools emerging. For example, that example I gave about a patient who's, let's say, had a long medical history, could have thousands of pages of records. Imagine if a new doctor comes on the scene because the other one's away or something happened to him or moved or whatever the case may be. Imagine trying to synthesize and understand the state of the nation of that patient. That's a really hard thing to do. And so AI, we know, is very good at taking complex documents, like large PDFs, and allowing you to ask questions and things of that nature. But doing this with a patient record is a lot more complex. It's a lot more non-trivial because you have a lot of structured and unstructured information. So you have sentences written by doctors over time. You've got, diagrams. You've got all this kind of stuff. And AI is very good at parsing that information, at understanding unstructured information and organizing it so it can be searched and summarized. There's a variety of different tools that are coming of age.
Right now, who's happier? Are the patients happier or are the doctors happier? Like, are you seeing good results, basically?
We are. And like one of the key tools that we're using where we're seeing incredible results is an ambient AI scribe. So basically, this is a product that it's basically a service. When you come in, and again, we need to collect the right consents to make sure that you understand what's happening. And basically, there's a machine involved. But the doctor turns the service on. It listens to a conversation between a physician and the patient. And you don't have to tell it who's speaking. It'll always sort of figure that out. It'll exclude anything like, let's say, you and I are patient and provider, and we talked about, our vacations and the cottage and the lake or whatever, and the kids. It'll kind of block that stuff out. And then what it'll do is it'll take the total sum of our consultation and create a medically relevant note for regulatory purposes. This is really important because a lot of times what will happen, a physician will come into a session and transcribe everything that happens, like, where does it hurt? What happens when you do this? And tell me, what happens when you sleep? And tell me what happens when you touch it this way. And they're collecting information, they're collecting observations. And that consultation gets to a place where they've assessed what they're going to do and what the care plan is going to be. Maybe there's a therapeutic prescribed. Now, later on, a physician has to take that entire transcript and create a medically relevant note. So a note that's structured in a way that's very condensed. And that by itself usually takes longer than the actual consultation. It can anyway. For some people, it takes a bit less. But we've launched that for physicians, and we found that it gives them back at least 20% of their day. So you just think about that, the productivity enhancement of getting 20% of your day back. And also what it's done is it's allowed now physicians, instead of, having their heads sort of buried in a laptop taking notes, to pay attention to the patient and not worried about the notes and just worried about the patient. So they observe more, and what we found is that they touch the patient more, and they care for the patient more. They have more of a caring energy towards the patient. Interestingly, there's been studies that show your physician touching you and looking at you and caring for you actually results in better patient outcomes.
Really? Why is that, you think?
I think it's because there's something about having a care provider show interest in our care. We know that placebo effect. We know just the power of belief is powerful, right? We know placebo is a very powerful thing. Like people in the pharmaceutical industry rave about this all the time. Like, it is natural to have a patient see significant improvements when they're taking a sugar pill, just because they believe they could be taking some therapeutic. So our observations, what we experience, how people interact with us, the level of care they show us, the level of interest they show in our well-being impacts how we feel about our wellness and our healing. Isn't that crazy?
I guess it reminds me of whenever I'm talking to my accountant about the IRS. Like whether he gives me good news or not, I always feel better after I speak to him.
Totally, right?
Because he
Yeah,
does,
your lawyer,
he
let's
is
say
really
you're
focused. Like I really think he cares about whatever my situation is.
any situation you're in, whether it's legal or accounting or whatever, like you talk to someone that really knows what they're doing, and they kind of level with you. They kind of give you the perspective. They say, hey, look, here are the pros and cons of this situation. Don't worry, we've got like a care plan for you. We're going to take care of your situation. There's going to be some bumps in the road. Like that kind of care is we're all humans after all, right?
So how is the model now evolving? Like, do you take every new patient and put it back, keep on learning, or like how do you improve the AI?
It's a great question. So first thing that we do is we have undertaken to collect these consents that I was talking about earlier. This is really important because when people walk into the clinic, we want there to be a clear and unambiguous understanding of that they're walking into a doctor's office that's leveraging technology to help the patient and to also help empower them. And so we will ask them, do you want to be contacted for clinical trials purposes? And this is really important because AI will now, if you say yes, AI will now be able to review your patient records for the purposes of connecting with different patient trials that are happening, and that could be a great opportunity for you. But yeah, generally speaking, if you've consented to your data to be sort of put into the AI pool, there's learning happening with it. There could be looking for patterns. There could be obviously looking for diseases, looking for challenges that are preventative from a preventative health. It's mostly to do with your benefit. You're deriving the benefit as opposed to the greater, but there is greater learning as well that's going on.
Well, it's interesting because it both sides, right, are in some sense consenting. Like the doctors are saying, okay, I want all my records to be put into the AI, and all the patients are saying, yes, I want my personal data to be put into the AI. I'm just curious. This is like an offbeat thing, but can you incentivize them to contribute to the AI? Like, can you say, hey, we have a rewards program for doctors who contribute, 10,000 records or more? Maybe they get shares because they're building essentially the main assets of the company.
Yeah, I mean, look, you definitely
Is that legal to do rewards like that?
you can. I think for physicians, the the idea here is physicians control your records, patients own their records, and then there's custodians who happen to kind of manage all of this data, and in different countries there's different access and ability to leverage that data. Depending on which regulatory framework that you're in, US, Canada, Europe, a physician may or may not be able to single-handedly lift and shift your data into a learning kind of algorithm. Now, obviously, what could be different is whether it's anonymized or de-anonymized. But even in some regulatory jurisdictions, even an anonymized data set cannot be kind of reviewed in that way. So, that's all pretty murky, from country to country, and it's an evolving art, if you will, to some degree with some of this stuff. But I do think there's a lot of focus on it right now because I think what everyone understands now, given what's happened with generative AI in the past couple of years, is just how powerful this technology can be and the importance of feeding this technology. I mean, if you think about it, healthcare is the best application you can think of for AI. It truly will help advance, identify disease, identify longevity opportunities. It's pretty compelling stuff.
Take a quick break. If you like this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Email me at altucher@gmail.com and tell me why you subscribed. Thanks. Like it seems like insurance companies would want to make this mandatory that physicians and patients use this because they're going to get prevention is the cure. So they're going to get diagnosis much earlier using the AI system you developed than any other solution.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right now, what we understand is a lot of the US insurers are just preparing their data because they understand they have so much unstructured data, meaning that it's not in perfect tables and arranged perfectly. It's all this stuff that I was talking about, and most of it can't be used effectively. We're talking about 30% of the world's data is healthcare data, growing at 36% per year.
So, and it's not usable because it's in English and you have to read the handwriting of the doctor. And like, why is it not all usable?
It's if let's say you went to the hospital and got a bunch of tests done, all that stuff gets kind of as a computer output into a report. The report is really dense. It's really hard to understand. It's a bunch of data that just gets sort of thrown down into this report, and what the AI, a lot of AI is doing now is going through that data, parsing it, and organizing it so that it's easier for humans to understand. And obviously, this is in human form as well, but it's just dense and it's not easy to kind of go through. And they're integrating it with other forms of information. So, for example, our AI capabilities are we have a product called Chart Distillery through our Pentavere AI service, which is one of the companies owned by HealWell AI. It's fascinating what they can do. They can effectively, take skyscrapers worth of data, and they can crunch that data, and they can essentially find key attributes that they're looking for. They were written in prestigious journals to find rare lung cancer. They have been able to stage head and neck cancers, which are famously difficult to do because of the complex anatomy in the head and neck,
And
just by looking at the text in an EHR.
so, yeah, so how do they do that? So what text are they looking at? They're looking at what the doctor wrote, what the patient said.
All that stuff. They're looking at blood tests, they're looking at doctor's notes,
Wow.
hospital printouts, results of diagnostic tests. They're reading all of that information and basically using large language models and transformers to be able to effectively key in on whether or not there's a risk for a particular disease associated with that.
And again, it's because their model learned from prior patients who had all these different cancers and so on. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so what like over the next 5 years, say, what technologies, like how is this going to evolve? Like what technologies are exciting you in healthcare AI? Because I think for an entrepreneur, and you started off your journey as an entrepreneur, you sold a company to PayPal, then you started Well, and then HealWell. You where do you think the opportunities are for entrepreneurs, and what are you excited about in what technologies are coming up in healthcare AI?
I think that all of this is going towards a situation where we're going to have a very good digital model of each one of us. And I think that's really exciting because, right now we have pieces of the data. We may have some information about the microbiome or the metabolome, or maybe some full body imaging, maybe some CT scans. So you can sort of put together a general picture, right? As the ability to kind of capture data and this continuous monitoring. I'm wearing a Oura ring. This is capturing tons of user generated data all the time, from when I sleep, my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate, even the temperature, even the moisture around my fingers, capturing all this data all the time. And so imagine, this whole area of digital twins. I don't know if you've heard much about that, but the idea of creating a digital twin of me, Hamed. So if we get to the point where we've got enough data where AI can start to cover areas that we don't have, so you can start to guess or assume what missing data could look like. Now we have a digital model of Hamed, and we can start interacting with that digital model with therapeutics and seeing what the digital model would do instead of trying on Hamed the human.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you'd
And
have to have a
this,
pretty comprehensive digital model. Like it has to basically model everything going on in your body.
yeah, but that's the future. The future is more continuous monitoring, more data, more analytics coming from everywhere, and this starts to create a framework where it gets pretty exciting, because now there's some kind of computational model of each one of us, and we can start to get really precise in terms of, what therapeutics would or would not work, or what combination of therapeutics. Maybe the doctor will say, oh gosh, look, based on your computer model, based on what we see, we think you need to walk 10,000 steps a day. You need to have this much olive oil. You need to take this particular therapeutic, and we think if you do this, then your metabolites and your biomarkers will improve. We'll review that again, and because we tried all these different things, and that's the other thing. It's the ability to try a bunch of different things against that computer model. You only get to try some things against the human model, right? Because your body has to go through stuff. But imagine all this ability to kind of try different scenarios like a machine would, one after another, and find the optimal one. This starts to get quite interesting from a longevity perspective. This is enormously important.
So like, is this where it starts to intersect with genomics? Like, would you take someone's, I don't know what you call it, like when they model all of your DNA and they know exactly your DNA versus
Absolutely.
another patient's DNA, and they use things like CRISPR to edit genes, would this start to intersect with that field? So, James's genome says he probably shouldn't take Tylenol, he should take Advil instead, or whatever. Like, it'll know all my drug interactions and it'll figure that stuff
Everything.
out.
Yeah, you're right. It starts with your multi-omics, right? Your genome, your metabolome, your microbiome. All of these. All of these ohms get collected. That's a lot of information. Just what you said. Just the genome and the microbiome. Obviously, the microbiome changes, the genome doesn't. But you have epigenetics. So you have this notion where genes get turned on and off as a result of our lifestyle factors. And this is what's interesting and what makes healthcare so difficult. It's like, hey, why did all the people that had these genes not, develop these comorbidities or these diseases or these ailments? Well, lifestyle factors are turning those genes on and off. And so it's you can't, it was thought previously that the human body was just like this system. You would do certain things to it and it would react a certain way. But they're finding out that it's a lot more sensitive. There's a lot more variables. And another part of the variable is actually our mind and our sentiments and how we feel, right? So it was viewed that we always say stress causes disease or influences disease. Now there's a much more mature understanding of how that actually works. Literally, it again, that power of belief. Can significantly influence your cellular health, which is fascinating.
What has the AI told us? Has the AI confirmed that, yes, I've looked at these 18 million patients, and it turns out the ones who were stressed had more problems?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's quite interesting as you deploy this AI into clinical settings and you start to, annotate all of the patient records with clinical observations. Say, hey, this person came in, they're quite stressed out. Here's what's going on in their lives. And when there's enough of those examples, of those annotations, those observations, they're they're sort of collated and integrated with all the other biomarker data, you can bet that we're going to start to be able to demonstrate how stress impacts your biomarkers, impacts the physiological body, and to date, I think we have a learned kind of observational ability to tell that, but not at a biomarker level. Maybe some studies, I'm sure they're out there that people have been able to demonstrate what happens to all aspects of blood tests and whatnot. But this is all coming.
Well, it seems like the integrated is key because, like, for instance, I have one of those beds, those 8 beds that it keeps it keeps track of so much data I couldn't figure it out, so I don't even really use it for what it's supposed to do. But it keeps track of how many hours a night you had good sleep, how was your breathing while you slept, how was your heartbeat while you slept. But my doctor, has never asked for that, or I should say, my wife's doctor has never asked for that. I haven't gone to the doctor at all, but nobody asks for this data. It's just like personally useful if we use it, but it's not really integrated with my healthcare records, for instance. So do you think that's coming up?
Right. 100%. It has to come up. Sleep is when we heal. It's when we get restored. That kind of data is incredibly important for a healthcare provider, to have over time. Now we just don't have the mechanism for most most health systems don't have the mechanism to collect that data. It's a lot of data. There's permissions, there's IT considerations, there's privacy considerations, but it'll happen. We're seeing a lot of this testing happen right now with glucose monitors. There's guys on TikTok and Instagram, testing themselves, eating various different foods. Even
But that's
going
like
for walks
one-off, like these biohackers. It's one guy trying something, but he could be completely different from all the other people trying something. So
Right.
with the AI, you have millions. It's as if millions of people are trying something and privately sharing it into this big pool of data. I mean, are there any patient privacy issues from the patient side? Like, is there a way, like, so I could have all my data in this AI thing and somehow the data gets out and everybody knows all my diseases?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of whoever's in this business has to take an enormous duty of care to understand just the importance of locking down this data to de-anonymize it when interacting with third parties. This is the most valuable data in the world. I mean, there's not, because you can't change a health condition. You can change a credit card number. Your credit card number gets compromised. It sucks. You were inconvenienced, but someone sends you a new one and you're off. You can't change a health ailment. And a lot of people want access to this information so that they can use it to, improve their ability to get into your email. Just phishing success rates go up dramatically when, the bad guys know your medical ailments. It's unbelievable what people will use this information for. So I think it's really important. I do think that's one of the things that really hurt 23andMe. At the end of the day, you're giving your biological sample to a company, and they're going to take a whole bunch of information related to that. It's incredibly important that information be safeguarded.
Now, by the way, have you spoken to a company like 23andMe in order to get all of their data and somehow add it to your learning models, or maybe you need it with the patients you currently have in the model? I don't know.
No, we have not. We have not added genomic data into our kind of major profile, meaning like as a kind of a core requirement for every patient, because most patients they're just doing general primary care, are not doing that at the private care level, like longevity health. We're collecting that kind of information, but we're not storing it on our servers right now. So because we don't we don't want to be able to store that information on our servers. We want to be able to access it when we need to access it. So there's a whole kind of strategy that you use in order to reduce the effect of breaches and whatnot. But yeah, we have strategies of being able to consolidate data when absolutely needed, and we can do that as well.
So the role of a doctor is going to evolve to basically being kind of this middleman between your data and the AI. This person, according to the AI, has an 86% chance of having this type of cancer, so he needs to go to this specialist. So he becomes sort of like the highway patrol as far as like, okay, you need to go here, you need to go here, which is what they've always done, but now they have a lot more data at their hands. And maybe you don't even really need to know medicine that well. I don't know. Like, you think it'll be easier to become a doctor? Like, it's easier to be a graphic designer now because I can use AI. I might not know how to use Photoshop or any design tools, but I can use AI now to design things. So it's easier for me to raise my hand and say, I'm a designer.
Well, I think you certainly need to, as a doctor, know your way around these systems in the future, and at least at a basic level. But I think there's great pains being made in order to not require the doctor to become an expert. So how do we do that? So, for example, with our technology, when we're distilling down a patient record or a really dense document and we're organizing it, and when the doctor is reviewing the organized version of the output that we're showing them, we will actually be able to show them where the source of that came from. So if the doctor says, this is strange, I'd like to better understand this, there's literally a click they can make, and it goes directly into some hospital printout somewhere or some page in the patient record where that information came from. I think that's really important, that we build systems that are not just black box systems, that allow physicians to continue to dig when they need more information to be able to sanity check it. Because, look, technology is not infallible. It's pretty good. It's getting better. It's often extremely precise, but we all know that it can make mistakes. And use ChatGPT or any of these models, it'll just stay right there at the bottom of the screen. This model can make mistakes.
Right. So I guess like one problem could be you don't know what you don't know. So for instance, let's say for whatever reason, you don't collect the ethnic identity of all your patients. Now that might be very relevant for a diagnosis. So whether someone has lupus or not might be completely related to what their ethnic background is.
Sure.
But if you don't, if for some reason you forgot to collect that particular data or some other data that's equally important, your system might get biased to say, oh, this person has lupus more often than they should be diagnosing that.
Yeah. I mean, look, oftentimes there's different ways to get to the right answer. So you would hope that that's the case. And you would hope that if the machine doesn't have enough information to render a suggestion or an insight, then it would just not do that and just say, hey, here's the view. It could be any one of these things, or this person likely has this ailment as a result of these sort of biomarkers or these sort of results in their blood tests or what have you. But I think it's really important that we build models that can be explained, that can demonstrate where they got their answers from. Otherwise, I think the stuff becomes a lot less valuable to physicians.
Also, is there a bias in terms of prescription? So for instance, doctors right now might in some cases, not always, of course, but might in some cases be biased by which pharmaceutical companies they have the closest relationships with. And I'm not saying anything bad here. It's just, Pfizer regularly visits my office and I like the salesperson and I like their drugs. And, my patient is having trouble sleeping. Here, take this drug from Pfizer that cures it. So the AI won't be biased towards a particular pharmaceutical company the way a doctor might be. And I wonder if that becomes an issue, or maybe they are biased in some ways towards certain pharmaceutical companies or pharmaceutical solutions rather than natural solutions. I don't know. Do you see bias in that?
What you're talking about is a huge area of discussion and debate, because that's what a lot of physicians are worried about, is that these algorithms will be written in such a way that do bias and tip the scales towards certain pharmaceutical companies over the others. And this is why what's really important, and whether or not it's something that's common practice, I think maybe from a regulatory perspective should be the case where any kind of tipping, any kind of inclination is disclosed. So creating some kind of disclosure, like, hey, look, this response that you got was funded in part by a group of pharmaceutical companies that included Pfizer. So I mean, as a doctor, it's important that you know that. If no disclosure is happening, I think you're probably assuming that there's no bias, right? And this is where I think we do need to make sure that we have good, clear rules and regulations about how information is presented to care providers.
But then there's the flip side of that regulatory issue. And this is what I really worry about with regulators, because so a regulator could say, like the government could say, listen, you have to use one of the AI recommendations in your suggested cure to the patient. Otherwise, that's malpractice. Now, that's an extreme, but I could see regulation going in that direction if government trusts the AI too much even. And so then a doctor would get in trouble for not recommending, if the doctor could say, I don't believe in this Pfizer drug and the AI keeps recommending it, but he could get in trouble if he doesn't, once the AI tells him it, if the regulators say you have to use it, that could be an issue.
It could. I think you're right. I think the burden of proof and demonstrating certain evidence-based, thresholds of success has to be quite high, in order to get to that point. But I think you're right. I think we can't really imagine a world right now where machines are trusted more than humans as it relates to healthcare. And I don't know. I don't think it'll be in my lifetime. time. I don't think it'll be anytime soon. It could be 100 years,
Yeah.
but it'll happen. I do think it'll happen. I think we'll get to a point eventually where the AI just will get so good, and there'll be belt and suspenders based approach, and people will get comfortable around that. But it's fascinating to think, how do we get there from here? What and I think it comes back to to some degree regulation. It comes back to what our expectations of these AIs are, but there's no doubt they're becoming more valuable, and how can you disregard them? I think there's a certain point in time where physicians could be admonished or even reprimanded if they don't use an AI to help them. So let's say you were just like, hey, I'm an old school doctor. I'm not saying today, but maybe even in 5 years that could happen. Like if you have a seriously good AI that's generically capable, available, that can work with any patient record and can make you, 80% less likely to make a mistake, maybe you should use it. You know what I mean?
Right now, do you see, like, for instance, thinking about pharmaceutical companies again, like, does the AI get to that point where it starts prescribing specific medicines or not? Like, I don't know where your AI stands. Does it do that?
No, yeah. No, I think what could happen in these situations when you've detected some kind of disease or you've identified a risk factor. In our software, we risk stratify a patient or a group of patients. So we say, hey, look, Mr. Doctor, we reviewed your patient records, and what we found is that there are certain patients that are higher risk for heart disease or diabetes or chronic kidney disease, and we literally kind of red, yellow, green, kind of identify who those patients are. And then when someone clicks on that, it'll identify what the call to action could be. Say, hey, you may want to prescribe something like this. It typically will not talk about a brand name. It'll talk about a molecule that could help with that particular, ailment. And it'll identify, recommended dosages and things of that nature. So that's, eventually all this stuff will become more automatic and more continuous. But I think it's really, really important in our view that this continue to be decision support and not allow machines to make decisions right now, because this still does make mistakes. There's still rough spots. I think it'll get better, but I think to kind of understand the importance of trusting the care provider, and having them, be the ultimate decision makers about our health is really important.
I mean, how much, like in the past 40 or 50 years, lifespan in US and Canada in particular has increased by about 11 or 12 years. So whereas people maybe on average live to the age of 68, or now they're living to the age of 80. And how much increase do you think could happen now due to, let's say if every doctor was using your system, for instance, and getting these, diagnoses much faster and getting so much more data about each patient so that, there's better prescriptions and so on.
Well, look, I think preventative care does elongate life, right? I mean, speed is one of the most important things, and time is one of the most important things in healthcare. If you have a pain, if something's wrong with your body, if something's not right, sometimes it comes down to time. Think about cancer. Cancer starts out with a number of cells in your body that something's not right, and they're, most of us have cancer cells in our bodies, and we're overcoming them, pretty easily. Our immune system can just readily take care of them and overpower them. But once in a while, our immune system is depressed for a long enough time, and there's some toxicity that we took into our body that suddenly the immune system is overwhelmed by this cancer. And then the thing about cancer is that it effectively becomes like this growing organism inside your body, and it gets to a point where we need to attack it now with chemotherapy or radiation and try to quell it or kill it, and it's all about time. Like if you can't catch these things early enough, you can really address them. And I would say that that's what real healthcare is. Otherwise it's sick care. Real healthcare is helping you avoid disease, in giving you great diagnostics and how to avoid disease, how to avoid those pitfalls. And a lot of it happens as a result of what you put in your mouth, and how you move your body, right? And so I do think that pretty significant improvements in lifespan and health span will take place as a result of getting this data in the right people's hands and nudging them to better care, so that they understand when they're taking some of these wrong steps that they're hurting themselves, right? And sometimes they're just not aware of that.
And
Yeah.
I wonder, like, when do you think you'll be at the point where you have the data where you can say, oh, the doctors who are using the HealWell system, all of our software, they're getting better results than the doctors who are not using it?
Oh, I think we're there. I think if you combine all the different AI co-pilots that our physicians use, they're calmer. They can pay attention during a patient visit. They don't have to spend time transcribing and pulling information into a patient record so they can understand it and study it later. I think that they are already running our disease detection algorithms against their patient records, to the extent that those patients accepted. This comes with consent. So to the extent the consents are in place, and I think already our physicians are seeing benefits that accrue as a result of using these tools. So it's pretty incredible. And when doctors free up time, they provide better care. They're also professionals that have significant time constraints and administrative burdens and overheads. Just the things that they need to do just to get paid are pretty incredible.
And one idea is you could make maybe some headlines. How about you donate your software in special situations? So for instance, Ukraine hospitals are destroyed. Let's say their whole healthcare infrastructure is destroyed. Can you kind of replace part of their healthcare system by essentially donating your software to all their medical professionals?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think that's a great idea. I think especially physicians that are really sort of struggling to keep up with the demand. Imagine having some of these tools at their disposal. I mean, it does exactly what you're saying. It sort of helps amplify a physician. In those situations, probably a fewer number of physicians are overwhelmed by the amount of care that they need to provide. So giving them tools and allowing them to take on more patients, but still putting the physician in the driver's seat, I think, is the key. And that's what our tools are doing.
Well, and right now, Well Company and HealWell, it's two separate companies. HealWell spun out of Well. They're both public in Canada. Are you looking to go public or to list shares in the US?
At some point, yeah. I think what we found with the US is, because of the regulatory kind of framework there, and there's typically now larger, the average company that's public is a bit larger, and there's actually fewer public companies today than there were years ago. You would think the opposite would be the case, but the demands and the costs to be public in the US are quite a bit greater now. Here in Canada, the costs are still a bit lower, so it makes sense. Even though our shares are available for purchase in the US through different quote machines, because we trade on the OTC, on the over the counter.
But it's interesting because there's both good and bad to the regulatory framework. Like most people I know who are like with public companies in the US, they're very upset at all the regulations. And it costs them $1 to $2 million a year to stay public in the US because of all the filings and accounting and all this stuff that you have to do. But the good side is that creates more volume in the shares because people feel more comfortable buying shares in the US than they do buying. I mean, Canada is almost like the US, but I'd rather buy shares in the US than shares on some stock exchange in, I don't know, China or the Saudi Arabian stock exchange. I don't know if they have one, but so this is kind of the flip side, which is that people feel it's like the US dollar too. Why is the dollar kind of still the standard currency. And maybe it won't be for long, but it's because there's more transparency in how many dollars are out there than any other country. So it's that transparency and safety and in disclosure that I guess being public here gives a company.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have similar laws. I think one big difference between the U.S. and anywhere else in the world, frankly, is just all the litigation, right? So you have a lot of what's called stock drop suit, where the stock drops, and a bunch of lawyers start looking at the filings of the company and say, hey, why did the stock drop? Was there any disclosure given? And you could argue both sides of that. You could say, hey, it's really good that they're doing that. And you could say, wow, that's going to create a lot of overhead for the industry because a lot of this sort of ambulance chasing behavior, if you will, is not focused on improving behavior. And so what ends up happening is you just have costs that go up as a result of supporting this. Professional fees go up, and then guess what? Audit firms get sued once in a while. So guess what? They're going to charge more. And that's what's really happened to some degree, is all of this activity has caused costs to go up to be a public company. But to your point, if that, whether directly or indirectly, causes there to be more trust in the system, then that's not a bad thing. And I think, there's a tremendous amount of volume. You can't argue with the fact that the U.S. capital markets are by far, by a country mile, the most powerful and most liquid anywhere in the world. And one has to think that has to do with some level of ability for third parties to intervene if they're not happy with the result, right?
Yeah, but you're right though. There's something needs to be done about the litigation. It's almost like the lawyers take advantage of freedom of speech more than just average citizens do. Like, oh, we're allowed to litigate. We could do anything. So
well, anything can be abused, right? And so these rules I think are all well intentioned. But sometimes they get abused as well by the very people who are designed to enforce them.
Yeah. So I wonder also, here's another idea. I'm just going to keep throwing ideas at you. What about a consumer version of your software so that I can just plug in my Oura Ring, plug in my bed, type like a little diary, how many steps I took today and how I'm feeling and what my stress levels are. And the software has very generic kind of output, like not real professional doctor output, but it basically says, look, we reached the threshold where you probably need to see a doctor.
I love it. You probably a product manager in another life. So I agree. We are actually working on that. It is not our main focus right now, but kind of one of the I'll say kind of earlier stage initiatives that we're working on, and we've got a partner that we've just been kind of discussing this with, is the idea of being able to pull patient records into a personal vault and then be able to add other information to that and take control and initiative and be able to invite a service to be able to scan that and provide data information. To me, that's very important to be able to get to the patient and empower the patient. In reality, that is the best way to achieve the best health outcomes, is to get people to care about their own health and to take steps. Because if there is a magic bullet that we have in healthcare, there's only really one, and that's behavior, right? And so how do you get someone to change their behavior? Well, you get them to take an interest in their health. And what do I have to do to experience better health? Well, let me find out. Let me plug all this stuff in and invite an AI to tell me a little bit more. Now, there's some concern from physicians that while all that's going to happen is that person's going to get this information and then call their physician and say, can you help me decode this? So it's got to be really simple. It's got to come with the right disclaimers, and it's got to be, correctly packaged. But I think it's a good thing. I think it'll do more good than harm to be able to empower people to start, thinking about their patient data. We own our patient data. What benefit are we deriving from owning that patient data, right? And that comes back to something you were saying earlier, which is the incentive. I could see employers start to incentivize you to care about your data.
Yeah, and definitely insurance companies. But again, it all gets wrapped up into what's going to be required and mandated as opposed to what's just a good idea.
Right.
So I think that there's an issue there. But in general, I'm excited. I do think when people say, "Oh, what good is all this AI stuff?" It's just, helping kids cheat on their college tests or whatever. I do see healthcare AI as basically the main use case right now for AI. Like it's going to actually, like you said, increase lifespans. So
I do too. And look, I take a lot of supplements. I do a lot of research around, my own personal health, and I take supplements, and I think they're helping me. I'm super excited about a day where I can actually, get way more precise biomarker data as a result of, all of this information, all my sleep information, all my activity information, all of my clinical notes, all of my blood tests, all going into some kind of model. And that provides me with real-time information about how my body's changing as a result of what I put into it. We're not there yet, but you can imagine that's not far away, right? And
yeah,
so, right?
I mean
So
that's interesting. Like, how do you like? I never know which supplements are doing what. Like, it's hard to know. Like, what supplements do you take?
me, I take bees because I did a pharmacogenetic test that showed that I don't digest my bees very well from food. So that was important. I did a genetic test that showed my strengths and weaknesses from a being able to digest food perspective, and then I supplemented based on that awareness.
Hmm.
So, Gary Brecka talks a lot about that. Get your pharmacogenetic test done, and then understand if you have the methylated B12 or the non-methylated B12. Otherwise, you could be wasting your money, right? So I do that. I take that with fish oil. I take True Niagen, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
nicotinamide riboside. It's an NAD booster. I think it's phenomenal technology. I've been taking it for years. I really think that it helps.
Do you think that's better than NMN, which is the other alternative for NAD boosting?
I do. And for full disclosure, I'm on the board of True Niagen, so the company Chromadex. But the reason why I think it's a lot better is there isn't a pristine source of NMN. Yeah, first of all, there's so many providers, and the level of quality that you could get is fairly diverse, and so you have to be really careful. Whereas with something like a nicotinamide riboside, when you work with a company like Chromadex that owns the patents and is very precise about quality. I mean, quality's a really important thing in supplements, because if you could be taking what you're supposed to be taking, but you could be getting 70% filler, right? So it's really important to consider that. But I mean, if you kind of look at the metabolic pathway that both NR and NMN take in order to get to NAD, boosting your NAD. NMN is a longer pathway. And so, generally speaking, we think that NR is a much better booster. And so, yeah, that's one that I take. I take a curcumin every day, which is great for low levels of inflammation in your body. I take a lion's mane, and I'll take a ginkgo. I don't know if I've heard
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Dr. Daniel Amen. He talks
Oh,
about
no.
the so he's a really interesting guy. Like he's a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and people come in and see him with various different mental health issues. What he does is he also scans your brain at the same time as talking to you and understanding your clinical issues. And what he's now scanned thousands of people, and he started to develop some real understanding. He kind of developed the kind of pattern recognition that an AI would, but he just did it intuitively himself. And he started to, take someone that came in and look at their brain and say, "Wow, I can tell why you're having these issues." Like, what our thoughts are the product of this brain. Think about the thoughts being the software. The brain being the hardware. If the hardware is not working, how do you expect the software to work properly? Right. And so he'll then take you on, he'll ask you to stop smoking or drink less, or,
Wow, I want to be his patient.
he's pretty incredible. But he says the most beautiful brains take ginkgo. Ginkgo biloba increases the circulation in your brain. You got to be careful you don't take too much because you can cause some hemorrhage, some bleeding up there, but some hemorrhages and whatnot. But yeah, ginkgo. I take a ginkgo once in a while. So over time I've sort of collected ones that I think are really really meaningful. In the winter, I'll take D because D is incredibly important. In the summer, I won't because I don't want too much D. I'm out in the sun a lot.
What's a good amount of vitamin D?
This is a really good question.
During the pandemic, I was taking like 10,000 IUs a day, but I think maybe that's too much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I take 5 a day, and if I'm not feeling well, I'll double up. And D was incredibly important. During the pandemic, we heard a lot about that, and I don't think I understand the exact reason for it, but I do in terms of whether or not it would kind of help you avoid the spike protein or whatnot. But it certainly did improve the defenses, and it's one of the ones that is famously measured by every care provider. They want to understand sort of your D levels to understand your immunity overall, but your immune system and whatnot. Those are sort of the key ones that I take. If I will take kind of a L-tyrosine once in a while if I'm feeling anxious, that helps. That's the precursor to your dopamine. So you will produce more dopamine as a result of having L-tyrosine. It'll kind of calm you down. If let's say you're going through an anxious time, that's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I have all of these in my cabinet and I take none of them. I was taking NMN for a while, but it's hard to know if it's actually doing anything. And so I just drift away, and maybe I should start up again on these supplements.
But this is why I think it'd be very interesting to know through hard data how our body's responding to these things, because you're right. It's unless you're really sensitive, unless you're really tuned in and paying attention and measuring how you feel and almost being clinical about it, it may be difficult to discern whether or not these things are working.
I see your company also. Here's another idea. I see you guys as a platform for people to give doctors like this mental health doctor you mentioned, give doctors an incentive to collect data and potentially, sell it to your platform. Like you could use that data now for all your patients in your system.
Yeah. No, if we have the right consents, if we're providing value to our patients, then what I find that's really the key with patients is that they will let you use their data as long as they get something back. They get some value out of that. Say, hey, I'll let you use my data, and you must anonymize it. And I don't want you to, be sending my name to anyone else. But I also then want to see how I compare with the average person in my town or my country or with my cultural disposition. This could be very valuable.
That's a great idea.
Right?
People are competitive. I want to know I am the healthiest 56-year-old in my neighborhood, in my town, in my state or whatever.
One of the things that we're working on we have a longevity health business. One of the things that we're working on now is to try to tell people, look, here's your chronological age, and here's what we think is sort of your intrinsic health age, as it relates to what the information is telling us. And we'll tell you if we think you're aging faster, slower, or about the rate at which you should be aging. Because some of us are aging faster than we should be aging. And some of ours are aging slower. And this is just given to us through a model, right? And I think because there's got to be a way to get people's attention. And most people, it's about the finality of life. It's like, what do you mean I'm aging faster? What do you mean that I'm really 5 years older? Like my body's 5 years older than my chronological age. I don't want that to be the case. Tell me what I need to change, right? So I think it's coming to terms with a simple and powerful vision for yourself and where you are today and where you want to go. It's just like anything in life.
Well, Hamed Shahbazi, the CEO, founder of Well Health Technologies, and also HealWell, which is kind of the AI spinoff of Well Health. Thank you once again for this is the again, I think this is the most important area of AI. I think this is the one that's going to change everyone's life within a very small amount of time over the next few years. I think your company and companies are at the center of this. So I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. And thanks so much once again for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been awesome. Really fun to talk about this with you. Thank you for your interest and all your great questions. We look forward to
yeah, you have to come on again. I'm going to have more questions.
You got it.
Thanks, Hamed.
Thanks.